This is Boomer Time, a proactive podcast for baby boomers, about baby boomers, and for people taking care of baby boomers. If that sounds like you, then you're in the right place. I'm Nancy Kogar, elder law attorney and aging advocate, and this podcast was made just for you. Remember, though, the things we discuss here are not intended to be legal advice, and no attorney-client relationship is established by this podcast. Greetings from Kylemore Abbey in the heart of Connemara on the west coast of Ireland. Can you hear the bells a-clanging to call the nuns to their noontime prayer? Well, Kylemore is in the mountains, a beautiful place. It was the first abbey to be established in Ireland by the Benedictine nuns who had fled from Belgium to escape the First World War. It's a beautiful and peaceful place. Lots of visitors go there now. The building was initially established, which looks like a castle, as a romantic gift from a husband to his wife. Good job, Lord Henry. And then later became the abbey. It includes a convent original house and a farm where they still grow vegetables, fruits, and flowers. And as I said, it's a popular place to visit. Hello to you, and welcome to Boomer Time. As you know, I'm your host, Nancy Kogar. Well, I recently made a trip to good old Ireland and came home with some lovely memories and experiences that I will share with you today, and also some impressions on how the elderly live and interact in their communities there. And I also spent some time as well looking at how the Republic of Ireland, which is independent and a national separate country from England, they won't let you forget that, how they deal with the issue of aging in their population. They've got a lot of the same issues there with the overall community aging at escalating rates, and the younger community either dependent on elders financially or otherwise leaving the country for jobs elsewhere. I have some interesting observations to share. And I also want to take some time, if we have it, to update you on Boomer Time and our offerings that are available to you, exciting things on the way, and touch on some recent elder law news that I think you can use. That'll all be part of this episode on Boomer Time. And as you know, I'm an elder law and estate planning attorney here in Chattanooga, and I am passionate about helping people become more aware of the tools they need as they age. And as you know, also, this show is aimed at helping all of us become better prepared for the issues that come with aging. And a big part of that is, of course, planning, which is a big part of my practice. Baby boomers are aging, and it's not just here, but across the globe. And as I've mentioned before, it's dubbed the Silver Tsunami. America's not the only country dealing with this issue. A significant portion of our population is aging. You just can't avoid it. But what you can do now to plan and be ahead of the wave and better prepared for your older years is why I created this podcast. So as I mentioned, I will share a perspective from Ireland, both a snapshot on the issues there when it comes to aging, what they're doing right, and maybe not necessarily wrong, but challenges they face, and what we might learn from all of them back home here. We'll touch on that in just a moment. Be back in a minute. Well, welcome back to the show. This is Nancy Kogar, and you are listening to Boomer Time. Today, we are looking at the issue of aging across the pond in the Republic of Ireland. I spent some time there recently, wonderful time, and observed some things, learned some things, and I want to share some things that I think will be helpful to you. Also, share a few stories along the way, as it is still a beautiful, open, and rugged territory across the western coast of Ireland. You know, it's called the Wild Atlantic Way, and it certainly was that. I plan to share a few photos, so you can see those on my website, nancykogar.com, or in the show notes. if you want to look at those on YouTube, Spotify, or even Apple Podcast. And while you're there, I want to remind you, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss anything in the future. Make sure to fill out that form there. So, during my visit, we also traveled to a place called Achill Island, which is also on the northwestern coast of the Republic of Ireland. There are lots of rugged mountains, peat bogs. Have you ever seen a peat bog? Well, I've got some pictures of those. Majestic views on the Sound, which open up to the Atlantic Ocean. Achill has a small population of just 2,345 people, and that's according to the 2022 census. And I would say, based on my perception and my time there, that has not changed much. But it is part of Ireland's famous Wild Atlantic Way, and the Cliffs of Moher are to the south, located in County Mayo. We visited Achill Island on a somewhat sunny and windy day and took some photos. Admittedly, I got to tell you, it's one of those places where you just can't seem to capture the full spectacular landscape in one individual photo. There were lots of open and winding trails, people biking, but also, I want to let you know that most of it is accessible by car. Believe it or not, most of the roads are well paved, albeit winding and narrow, but they're fairly well maintained, which was interesting to me. So being in a new space, of course, can help you to have a fresh or new perspective. Look around, notice what's different than what you got at home, what's good, what's bad. The question is, what do you take home with you? So I considered all those things, and I've taken home some thoughts that I think will be helpful to you, and I want to share those here. So, obviously, and if it's not obvious yet, I have a real love for the Irish people and their history. They're a passionate group with a courageous history. They were the ones to withstand the push of the Roman Empire. They were also the ones to preserve some of the original printings of the Bible. Those are housed in Dublin at Trinity College, and that's known as the Book of Kells. I've gone to see that. It's beautiful. I encourage you to spend some time there. They're also Irish, are bright in spirit and really have the gift of encouragement. They smile to greet you and fellowship, and even in the midst of challenges. They've got a great sense of humor, of course. And, I talked with some folks and I met them, and they mentioned the good old days, and they laughed because they asked, when were those? They just faced challenges as they came and did it together. And that's something powerful to be learned in that, I think. So here are a few general observations as to aging in Ireland. I hope you have some takeaways, good and or bad, compared to us back here in the States. And most importantly, things I think we can use as takeaways, as I said, to encourage and remind us to be prepared in our older years. So, Ireland's population is aging faster, really, than any other country in Europe. So, the number of people over age 65 is growing by 35% in the last 10 years. And that's 3 times the rate of growth for the rest of the overall population. Based on that rate, it's estimated by 2051, which is not that long from now. Sounds long, but not that long from now. The older population over 65 in Ireland will double to 1.6 million. And this is an island, relatively small island. You could drive from one end to the other in a couple hours. So by the middle of the century, that will equate to about 1 in every 20 people on the island of Ireland being over age 85. Think about that. Another factor in all of this, which has contributed to the population shift, is the decline in fertility rates. Fewer people are having babies. And that, with an increase in life expectancy, has the Irish government really looking at strategies for its aging population. So one thing I did notice, and as part of that strategy, is there is an intentional effort to encourage green space for walking, whether it be with a pet, a grandchild, anything like that, or just by yourself. I saw a lot of that in the towns and communities. In Westport, which is in County Mayo, there is a beautiful mansion, which is known as the Westport House. And the acreage is opened up to the community there, so it brings lots of people to walk and spend time. It's a beautiful green space. Kind of reminded me of a miniature version of Central Park. So you can see also in that manner the way the towns were constructed over the years and grew, that it also encouraged mobility and walking because there are still city squares which offer shopping, restaurants, community space, all with sidewalks. And believe me, even though there's rain, those spaces stay very busy. So, ironically, from an Irish perspective, the older people in this country are far better off than they were 50 or 100 years ago. That's a reference to the comment that I heard about the good old days, which were not really good. The truth is that the older population in Ireland is more financially stable these days than the younger generation in a lot of ways. So here are just a few notes about that. So most have homes and property, which they have worked over time, and families stay in those homes until the end of their lives. There is a retirement system in the Republic of Ireland, which, if you pay into it over the years, at age 65, you become eligible to receive benefits. This is an interesting factor as well for the car-dependent households that live outside the town centers, because that can really create some challenges if you don't drive. There are trains that can take you from one town to another, but there is no local mass transit in most of these smaller towns. What you got is your feet or your car or a combination thereof. And interestingly enough, Ireland also has no automatic renewals of driver's licenses. So when someone turns 72, the law requires that you apply for a 1 or 3-year renewal. And after you turn 75, you will be required to produce an additional certification at every renewal from your treating physician that says that you're able to drive, see, etc. Interesting, huh? So when it comes to long-term care, the Republic of Ireland seems to primarily rely on unpaid caregivers, family, who care at home, and then private pay healthcare workers. Nursing home care is an option, and it's controlled under something known as the Fair Deal Scheme, in which it's designed so that you pay what you can afford if you need it, and financial support is otherwise subsidized. So that's not unlike some of the government entitlement programs we have here, which are based on income. But I don't know if there's a recovery mandate in Ireland as there is here. As far as cost, the average cost of nursing home care, if that's a necessity, is about 1,564 euros a week. The value of the dollar is not as strong as it used to be, so that equates to about $1,700 a week or $6,800 a month. So that's lower than what we typically see here of about $10,000 a month for nursing home private care, but still considerable money. It may also surprise you that in a study of older adults in Ireland, which was done by the Irish Times, which is the major newspaper in Ireland, it reported that older adults are generally far from being reliant on social support offered by the government. Guess who is? The younger generation. So instead, the older adults are contributing more often, both in time and in financial assistance to their children and grandchildren. So it's the other way around. The study found that almost 50% of older adults in the Republic of Ireland help their adult children financially, rather than the other way around, which was just 3%. Half of those older adults, who are aged between 54 and 74, so that includes me, provide regular childcare for their grandchildren, which accumulates to about an average of 36 hours each month. So that's a lot of time. 2/3 of all older adults participate in wider range activities like the tradition of going to the pub, which, I find is really less about drinking alcohol in Ireland than it is about socializing and visiting with your neighbors. I saw people bringing baby carriages and all kinds of things into some of the pubs, so different place. So lastly, according to this study, older adults are the backbone of the volunteer structure in Ireland. And, I did observe an actively engaged older community busy with those types of efforts, whether it was the local theater, to volunteering for hospice care, or just checking on their neighbors. And of course, the dominant church in the Republic of Ireland is still the Catholic Church, which you see a presence of that as well. Most reports of hospitalizations appeared to be for untreated or chronic health conditions rather than emergency visits, and those are typically for individuals aged 80 and up. And when it comes to caregiver support, the Irish government does have some tax relief programs in place where they will offer those reductions to individuals caring for family members or for the individuals themselves if there is no one to care for them. There is also a death-related benefit where they will offer support for up to 6 weeks after someone dies or 12 weeks for a caregiver. Finally, I thought this was interesting. The government also offers a benefit to anyone upon their 100th birthday. It's called the Centennial Bounty, and it's an award that is made by the President of Ireland to a citizen to mark their 100th birthday. It's not anything significant, but I just thought that was interesting. So we're going to take another break after I've finished my observations, and when we come back, I will share one more story of my own experience in Ireland, including the discovery of a long-lost or unknown relative to me. We'll be back in a minute. So welcome back to Boomer Time. I'm sharing stories from Ireland, both reflections of my travels and issues related to aging. You should be hearing the waterfall from Kylemore Abbey, beautiful place that I shared before. It was a lovely time, and I encourage you to spend some time there if you can. If you've already visited, well, reach out and tell me. Share some of those personal reflections. Maybe your experience was similar, or maybe it was different. Share your thoughts. I'd love to hear, and I might share those on the show as well. Ireland, of course, is rich in some of the best stories ever told. Sometimes they seem fairly unbelievable, but they insist they're true, and I would love to hear some of those from you if you have any of those to share. I will also share that the Westport House, which I mentioned earlier, is built on top of a medieval castle that was home to an Irish pirate named Grace O'Malley. The dungeon is still there from the former castle, and I visited that as well. Luckily, I was released immediately on my own recognizance, right? But it was a dark place and very much what you would expect a dungeon to be. So the stories of Grace O'Malley are movie-worthy, I will tell you as well. She stole away on her father's boat as a young girl and was discovered only after they were far out to sea. Later in life, she was a skilled shipping cargo trader, pirate, and leader, and a force to be reckoned with. You mention the O'Malleys, and guess what? You'll still get a reaction today. Speaking of which, I spent some time with a distant relative of mine in Ireland and had a wonderful time. He has a O'Malley in his blood and part of my family lineage as well. We couldn't exactly figure out the relationship, but we determined that we were distant cousins. So apparently when my great-grandfather and his family left Ireland for Canada during the potato famine, my cousin's family stayed. And it appears that his great-grandfather was brother to my great-grandfather. So as I said, he's got O'Malley's in his blood. We had a great time together, and there was some connection and, funny feeling. I saw a faint familiarity of my now deceased father in his face and some of his expressions. We heard names that were similar on both sides of the family, and it was fun to have some of those connections. So those are my stories, reflections, and thoughts on my recent adventure in Ireland. And as we wrap up things today, I thought it would be helpful also to share some recent elder law news you could use, a few items that have been in the headlines impacting older adults here in the U.S. and their caregivers that you probably won't hear elsewhere. So I'm going to do that in just a minute, but I do want to remind you to follow us on Facebook or Instagram so you can stay in touch with what we're doing. We've got lots of exciting things happening. I am going to be a regular guest on 3+U, which you will see me out there. Let me know if you see me and check out some of the issues that we discuss. Hey, join the Boomer Time community. I want this community to grow. So go to nancykovar.com. Fill out the form that you'll find there. That's important. And subscribe. Hey, we've got all kinds of things coming, and I don't want you to miss out on that. So, with that in mind, I want to share a few headlines that I found on my return that I thought were worthy. Of course, the first one of those is that the IRS has finalized its 10-year required minimum distribution rules for inherited IRAs. We talked about that in a prior episode, but this is important, especially for those of you that have inherited an IRA and are trying to stretch that over time. Perhaps there's an IRA that you inherited from a parent, or perhaps you've got an IRA that you intend to have your children inherit when you die. This is something you want to be aware of. So I'll put that article in its entirety on the website. So here's a thought too, when I saw this, and it reminded me, and I think this is a good episode as well, that a lot of people don't realize that you need to include your small business in your estate plan. That can wreak havoc at estate administration. Let me tell you, if you do not have a succession plan in place. So found a story where it said 1/3 of business owners do not have that in place. And I think it's more than that personally from my experience, but that's something you want to think about. Especially if you've got employees or active work that you're doing, it needs to address the 5 Ds, as the article says: death, disability, divorce, distress, or disagreement. Like I told you, you need to have plans in place so it doesn't lead to costs, doesn't lead to litigation, conflict. You want to get these things taken care of. It's worth the investment now. So that was a worthwhile story, I thought. And like I said, I may expand on that coming up in an episode. I think that's an important issue. Here's another one. High school graduates need to have a estate plan in place, especially if they're headed off to college. We don't think about this, but when they're 18, they're legal adults. So that means if mom and dad are at home, something happens, you do not have the authority to step in and help or gain access to information, any of that, unless you have a power of attorney. So I thought, we still have people headed off to college. This is important. You might want to think about that before you say bye-bye. So here's another issue. There are more boomers getting divorced. So, when you look at overall divorce rates, 36% of divorces now involve people 50 and older. It's been dubbed a gray divorce, and it reflects some of, they think, societal changes with women gaining more financial agency and so forth. That's according to Psychology Today, but there may be some additional factors that contribute. You know, baby boomers had more pressure, I think, about to be married, to stay married longer. Um, there's a whole range of things also, I think sometimes, which I don't favor this, but sometimes people will get divorced in order to help their financial status, long-term care. I never encourage that, but that is a option that some take. So that was interesting. Finally, I found one more that related to 40% of people who said they don't have enough property to make a will. Well, as you know, I've said it doesn't matter how much property you have. It's all about how you want your property to be inherited when you die. So it's not the size, it's the fact that you have it. So you have to have a plan, right? You gotta get a plan regardless of how much you have. So 4 in 10 people believe that they don't have enough assets to make a will. Okay, so that's according to caring.com's 2024 Wills and Estate Planning Study. You know, that's a misconception, that only the wealthy need estate planning. Well, I think I've mentioned that more than enough times, but I will continue. So, you have to have a will in place. It's going to include, whether you want friends, family members, charities, anyone to inherit your property. If you don't, the state law controls. So you do not want that. Oh, and you might even want to put something in place. So what happens to your beloved pup or kitty cat when you die, if you should die? Believe it or not, I have a lot of people that do that. So in all, you need to have a will in place. So despite this, only 32% of people have a will. And that's a decrease over the last year. So I've said 70% of people don't. And that holds true to what I'm saying there. So consider it. So I hope you've enjoyed our time together today. I know I kind of ventured off some of the things that we normally talk about, but I thought there were some interesting perspectives on jolly old Ireland and my time there and the older generation and how they're faring. There are lessons to be learned. So we always should learn. So, and these articles will be available on the website as well. So, well, I appreciate you joining me today, and I'm going to catch up on my Eastern time zone because it's 5 hours later there. So I'm a bit confused this time around. Not really, but you know what I mean. So anyway, you are important to me, and I just encourage you to continue to listen. Let me know if there are issues, questions that you may have. I want to hear from you, and stay connected. Stay connected. So thank you for listening today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.